Soni Patnaik, JM Financial Services, with us this morning. So is Chakri Lokapriya of Red Strawberry. Welcome to both of you. And it's looking like we're going to have a massive Monday after a fabulous Friday. I mean, just let me pull up the implied open once before I get to Soni on the levels expected for this morning. Very strong, on the back of maybe the kind of flows we've seen. And some debate out there whether this was only because of FTSE rebalancing, but this is actual money that has come into the Indian market. Soni, what do you reckon? What is the distance to 26,000 looking like? Or are we being a little premature in talking about it?
Hey, good morning, Tamanna and Samina. Thank you so much for having me on your show. So I think it's no surprise that we may test 26,000, all eyes on 26,000, whether we are able to cross that level and see another 100 points above the 26,000 mark is going to be quite crucial. If you look at the option metrics, the highest open interest on the call side are actually placed around 27,000. However, considering that this is the final expiry week for September series, rollovers will also take over beginning from today. So anywhere between 25,800 can act as a strong support for intraday. Above that, it may consolidate till 26,000 if it's not able to sustain above that mark. The crucial support for the entire week or for the next 5 to 6 days, it's quite important to watch the 25,600 mark. If it's able to cross below it, then there can be some profit booking. However, I feel that any dip you see towards 25,800 also can get bought into, keeping a stop loss of 25,600. Not to chase today's gap up, it's wise if somebody would have already bought it from the last week levels, book around 26,000 and sit tight. Focus on stock specific strategies. This is about Nifty. A Bank Nifty, on the other hand, looks still strong. It may test 54,000 before showing you any signs of profit booking. So I think Bank Nifty, if somebody is already holding at lower levels, continue to hold the longs in Bank Nifty and head for a target of 54,000 around which one can book profits. As of today, it is wise to stick to either Bank Nifty for a long trade, or you can stick to stock specific strategies. Do not chase Nifty in the gap up.
Chakri as well joins in with a fundamental view on the markets. Chakri, how are you feeling? Till yesterday it was all about Indian markets being expensive, activity being restricted, lack of upside triggers post the Fed rate cut. But Friday came and so the markets record new highs. From where we are today, where is your bias? Are you cherry picking in the broader markets, or is it large cap space that you're attracted to?
I think there is enough to buy within both the large cap and the mid cap space, because as far as the index is concerned, probably trades about 20, 22 times depending on how you look at earnings. That's not really that expensive in this point of the economic cycle, where you're just before a rate cut happening in India. Now, after the pivot in the US, clearly RBI will also turn. It's a question of time. And the rates will need to fall quite significantly over the next 1 year or so. And you can see that all the manufacturing companies, financial services companies, and some of the consumer durable companies will benefit from this move.
Soni, what are your top picks this morning?
Tamanna, the first pick is in Trent, which has given a good short covering move on Friday's close and a very strong breakout above 7,400. So one can buy Trent for targets of 7,600 to 7,640, keeping a stop loss of 7,400. The second pick comes in from the realty space, which has seen a good breakout. That the stock is DLF. Now on Friday, we've seen a very strong bullish engulfing candle pattern close for DLF. It has given a strong breakout above 860 level. It has very strong support around those levels. One can buy DLF around 875, keeping a stop loss of 865. A target of 900 and a follow-up target of 910 can be seen.
Soni, that's a buy call coming in on DLF. Soni, what are you doing with HDFC Bank? There is a fundamental news trigger. The stock went home at its day's high point. And it's been 5 years that the HDFC has underperformed Bank Nifty. Do you feel now could be a time when most people are circumspect, or have been, reducing their positions on HDFC Bank? It could outperform. Would you buy HDFC at 1741?
Samina, HDFC Bank has given a good breakout. If we look at just the option chain data for HDFC Bank, above 1720 is a good option chain breakout that has come in. If we want just a short-term trading perspective for HDFC Bank, anywhere close from 1710 as a strong support on the higher side, one can see it testing higher towards 1760, 1770 levels. Now, if you want somewhere between a medium to a long-term view for HDFC Bank, one can definitely continue to hold the stock with 1600 as a stop loss, and a stock and the targets for the stock can be seen towards 1900 to 2000. So I think it's quite wise. It's in a good level to accumulate and hold for a medium term level for targets of 2000.
Chakri, very quickly, what do you feel? I mean, mutual funds for the first time in history have reduced their positions on HDFC Bank pretty significantly. And if you look at historical data, HDFC Bank has largely been an underperformer as compared to the Nifty and even compared to Bank Nifty. Do you feel the time has now come for HDFC Bank to turn the corner?
I think, other banks like ICICI or even troubled banks to an extent like RBL, they're going to do a QIP, are better positioned for the simple reason that HDFC Bank still has to work itself out of its merger-related costs, which will still take time, and its valuations kind of are not inexpensive. So until there is the trigger of renewed growth that we'll see from HDFC, we'll still stay away from the bank.
Chakri, I want to talk about the whole semiconductor story and how much of it do you think will lead into sentiments today? We had a pretty massive deal which was signed during Prime Minister Modi's trip to the US. Do you think a Keynes Tech, a CG Power, a Dixon are some stocks and stories that you would look at today, considering that India is going into its own first fabrication unit and will supply to US defense?
Morning, Tamanna. I think you're absolutely right. These are very early days for the Indian semiconductor industry and its growth path, and therefore, the valuations will always kind of look expensive. But the growth rates of each one of these companies, whether it's Keynes or Dixon's, these companies will grow very fast. They're of 40-50% revenues over the next several years. And, the profitability clearly will be lower. There's an initial capex phase, but that shouldn't stop one from investing. So I'd clearly go and buy a company like Dixon's. Keynes has already run a bit, maybe a CG Power. And, even all the other companies like Amber, they're not directly semiconductor, but they'll all, that whole ecosystem will benefit.
All right, I just want to look at some of the pre-open buzzers, and Vodafone on radar. We talked about this on our stock list as well. They have announced a pretty significant capex move with 3 companies. They're tying up with 3 hardware companies to expand capacities. That stock has been down and out, about 10% up in trade today. I want to see what Indus Tower is doing as an extension of the interest in Vodafone this morning. And Indus Tower also about 4% up in trade. What's in focus? Adani Total is in focus. Finance details coming in there, and that perhaps is helping. BHEL in focus. Pretty much everything that you must have seen on NDTV Profit's watch list this morning. That NTPC deal is perhaps helping as well. Some of the steel counters, Ratnamani, let's see, Tata Steel, some of them also in focus today. But Sonia, I want to come to you on Vodafone, because this is a stock which is owned in fairly large quantities by retail investors as well. A lot of them wondering which way the wind is blowing.
Tamanna, on charts, stock definitely looks quite weak because it has broken below its 200 EMA on a positional basis. So even if there is a bounce back towards 12 or 13.5, it may just be used as a space where one would like to dump the position. So I think it's quite weak, and there's no signs of any sort of recovery or a bounce back at current levels. Stiff resistance around 13.5 to follow.
What about you, Chakri, on Vodafone? Does the recent announcement where they have a $3.6 billion network equipment deal, and big players there, so basically they're buying now from Nokia, Ericsson and Samsung over the next 3 years. Does that enthuse you in any way or give you some confidence?
No, I think we'd still stay away from Vodafone simply because of the adverse Supreme Court ruling, which I think is clearly negative for the entire industry. Telecom industry, 70,000 crores from a Vodafone has to pay, kind of, dwarfs the new order that they have won. And this capex of a 58,000 odd crores is over and above the 70,000 crores now that they have to pay to the DOT. So I think, and even Bharti for that matter, it still has to pay 40,000 crores. So I think the whole, both these companies are clearly an award.
Right. Sony, a couple of other stocks that haven't participated last week, in fact, sold off for stocks on the tech pack, oil and gas, and pharmaceuticals. Do you have anything across these two verticals that look ready for a bounce back this week across IT, oil and gas, and pharma?
Samina, if we talk about the IT space, I think there could be still some more selling on a downside left. Stocks on the space, large cap stocks are actually looking quite fine. If we just accumulate on dips of around 2 to 3% more of a correction and accumulate in that correction, the stocks can bounce towards another 5% to 8% for a medium term position. So it's wise just to collect them on dips. If we talk about specifically stocks like TCS, 4,000 is the level, which is a very strong support. Now, the stock is somewhere around 4,200, 4,300 level. So let's wait for the support to be breached around 4,000 for one to buy on those dip levels. Now, if we talk about pharma space, I think pharma, clearly Sun Pharma is one stock which has been standing out quite strongly, and it still shows signs that, there can be another fresh breakout coming in. So Sun Pharma is the stock to watch out for. It can test 1,900 to 1,920 levels. 1,840 is a very strong support. If you look at the oil and gas space now, in that entire sector, BPCL is a stock one can look for. It has given a good recovery on Friday's close. There's an immediate support of 320. If BPCL holds above 320, it can bounce towards 350 odd levels.
Sony, another quick one that I want a quick view on is Hudco. After a very rough week, it did quite well on Friday. Do you expect follow-on buying in today's trade on Hudco?
Definitely, Samina. I think Hudco 260 is a resistance which is around its 20 EMA levels. So if it's able to cross that level, you can see it heading to higher towards 280. One can hold on to the stock. It has bounced exactly from its 200 EMA support, which is quite strong. So hold on with stock. If you see any small dip towards 245, can buy on those dips. Keep a stop loss of 235 and a target of 260 to 280 can be seen.
Right. Well, talking about stocks and what's going to bounce, but also what brokerages are constructive on, CLSA has come out with a note on urban consumption, highlighting the changing trends. Mahima has got more details on that. Mahima, what do you have? CLSA believes and has an opinion on something on the lines of trends that are changing in consumption.
Absolutely. So, Samina, it's a very interesting note, and they've said that consumption trends are changing, and Zomato is the best way to play this theme. Now, what they're saying is that over 1 lakh people were ahead in ticket queue for a $50 to $400 range of tickets, and Diljit concert sold out 250,000 tickets at an average price of $90. So, and similarly, concerts of Coldplay, Dua Lipa, as well as Bryan Adams were also sold out rapidly. So, this suggests that all 4 concerts saw a sale of roughly 3.5 billion to 4 billion, which is over 40% incremental quarterly sales of listed QSRs. So what they're saying is that consumption for older companies might be misleading indicator for consumption. Events like travel, eating out, luxury and premium goods is something that is really picking up and is emerging as preferred areas of spend, and QSRs are struggling, but Zomato and Swiggy food delivery platforms are chugging along. What they're saying is that the gross order value for Zomato's food delivery business continues to grow at a pace of over 25% for several quarters, while QSR have been struggling with growths of single digit as well. And Zomato's dine out business, while is a smaller portion of as compared to the delivery business, but it has more than doubled in Q1 FY25. They're also saying that data points from Nykaa, Make My Trip trend suggest that consumption remains robust, and this consumption trend is different as compared to FMCG companies and QSR companies, which have been seen as weathers so far. So overall, what they're saying is that Zomato is well placed to tap the increasing demand for consumer experiences.
Some context to, why there was so much interest on this, which is literally what we saw over the weekend with the craze for Coldplay tickets. At one time, nearly 1 lakh people in queue wanting to get those tickets. We saw that with Diljit Dosanjh short time ago. So if you are now someone who has experienced this over the weekend, talk to everyone about it and wondering what's the stock market play. The stock market play, according to CLSA, is Zomato. So that's the long and short, essentially, of what Mahima is saying. But I'm going to come to Chakri on that point. The consumption story and Zomato as a proxy for it, considering that it has already run up a fair bit.
I was in the queue for Coldplay also, and there were some 300,000 people ahead of me. Unfortunately, didn't get the tickets. So, companies like Lemon Tree, people will travel to visit and stay in the hotels to watch the show. These are not the 5-star hotels, but, a couple of steps below. So, and then, kind of look at as we are going into the festive season, while QSR might have been down and out. But again, companies like Devyani, they'll all come back during Diwali, Navratri, all those times when the festivities increase. So I think, yes, consumption in terms of the hotels is one way to invest, and some of the QSR plays.
What about you, Soni? How are you feeling about a Zomato? How are you feeling about a Trent? How are you feeling about a Lemon Tree, since Chakri also mentioned Lemon Tree?
So Tamanna, Trent, we've already discussed in the morning. It was one of my picks. Now, if you talk about Zomato on charts, one can see it has given a very strong breakout. It is just continuing with volumes even for today. So it can test around 305, 310 in short term with a very strong support of 285. So one can continue to hold the longs for a higher targets of 305 to 310. I think that's the stock to look out for. Even on charts, it's quite strong.
Zomato, and it's been on a roll. I guess the party will continue until Swiggy comes and hits the market with the listing in the next 6 to 8 months. That's the story on Zomato. A quick check on how pre-open is wrapping up. It's looking like a good start. Not as great as implied Nifty was indicating too, but a comfortable start, about 25,800 is what we are anticipating in early minutes of trade. 80 points higher on the Nifty 50. A couple of other names that could be in focus today across the Nifty 50, and you've got the breadth that's not looking too bad, is going to be Tata Steel. Soni, do you track Tata Steel? And beyond Tata Steel, anything else in the metals pack that looks constructive at this juncture?
So, Samina, if we look at Tata Steel, I feel that, 150 is an immediate support. Now, if it holds 150, it can attempt to take out the resistance of 156 for the day, which is going to be very crucial because that's where the 50 EMA is placed. Any move above 156, the stock can head higher towards 160 for a day or two sort of a move. One can continue to hold longs in Tata Steel with 150 as a stop loss. The other stock, which is looking quite strong from current levels, can be Vedanta. However, there's a resistance in Vedanta. There'll be a conditional buying Vedanta only if it crosses 460. One can look to buy in that stock for targets of 480, and then one can keep a stop loss of 450. At current levels, just wait and watch for Vedanta. However, at current levels, Tata Steel certainly looks like a good buy.
So Vedanta, Tata Steel, some of those coming in. I just want to understand, Chakri, how you're feeling about metals, and of course, including and not only, but including Tata Steel, and what else are you looking at in that space?
In a rate cut cycle, which we are going to embark on, and US has already started, India will come, but metals always benefit. But also there's the Supreme Court ruling, which has put fines on all these various steel companies. Tata Steel has to pay, I think, about some 17 or 20,000 crores, whereas companies like JSW Steel, Vedanta, they don't have those fines. So the way we'd go about metal and mining companies is the ones where there is no Supreme Court ruling, which is JSW Steel, Vedanta.
All right, just a couple of minutes left. Soni, want to know what is your one top pick this morning at a time when, maybe pre-open is putting a bit of a dampener on what we expected the markets to look like, but we'll wait. We just have about 2 minutes to see what really happens. What would be your one top pick at this point?
Tawana, for today, I have my eyes on ICICI Prudential. Now, the stock has been in range of 750 to 770, 772 and has not broken either side of the levels. I'll be keeping a close watch in the stock. If it breaks 772, it becomes a good buy for a target of 800. And only above that level, you can buy, keeping a stop loss of 760. So that will be the stock to watch out for today.
ICICI Prudential, what about a BHEL? Chakri, would you go in for a BHEL? It's roaring pre-open.
I think so. BHEL is now for a fresh lease of life. You look order book over the next 3-4 years is like some 2 trillion rupees. And so even if they do that 700-800 billion per year, which they are, this new order is about is pretty much allows them to reach that. So which means BHEL after all this trades only at about 25-30 times for the kind of order book growth, and therefore yes, clearly yes, buy.
Sony, anything that stands out for you as we see market open? As expected, Pharma is bouncing back today. Anything that you've spotted? I know we talked about this before the markets opened up, but post-opening, anything that you like?
Samina, the first would be a continuation in DLF, which is up about 1.5% from the recommended price. And I think it can test up to 900, 910 targets by day end today. The second would definitely be from the auto space. I think Bajaj Auto is a stock which is just continuing in its uptrend and looking quite strong. Even at current levels, it has crossed above 12,000 once more. So keep us intraday stop loss of 12,000. The stock can test 12,400 and 12,500 targets in cash levels.
Chakri, what about you? Are you buying into any of these pharmaceutical names? I mean, there was enough and more excitement around it. And with the US elections around the corner, it seems there could be some policy impact on pharma companies.
There could be, yes, but we're staying away because I think there's more growth. For example, Mankind Pharma, clearly there are enough growth levers out there. The valuation is decent enough, and there's sufficient runway for growth. But outside of that, we're not looking at it as a sector because we think there are enough in the rate sensitives like autos, banks, manufacturing. And so that's where our focus is.
So Pharma in focus, I want to talk a bit about autos and what's happening with autos. Some brokerage notes may be moving it along there, but Chakri, let's talk about M&M, let's talk about Bajaj Auto, let's also talk about, a clutch of others, TVS in the two-wheeler space, Maruti, Tata Motors. Are you feeling love for all of them today, or is it more about M&M and Bajaj Auto? Samvardhana also jumping up there, but do you think that this rate sensitives kind of a mood will sustain with autos?
Yes, indeed. Bajaj Auto clearly will continue to benefit. The rate cycle has not started yet. Whenever it starts in the next month or two, then clearly it will continue to benefit and take market share. Newfound love and escorts, your farm equipment, and now they have a wider range of products after the Kubota deal. And so I think, and also the valuations are very well intact. Balance sheet is very strong. So it's escorts and Bajaj Auto.
Finally, OMCs aren't doing too badly in early trade. They've had weeks and weeks of underperformance. Even when crude prices were moving lower, BPCL, HPCL, IOC were not seeing the buying. Today, for a change, a little bit of green. There's no runaway rally here, but anything on OMCs that you would consider initiating? Sony, that question was for you.
Okay, so I think, Samina, OMCs, we've already discussed in the morning. Around BPCL is the stock that I'm still keeping a watch. It is just closing in on the 50-20 EMA hurdle, and it's got a good support around 320. So hold the stock with 320 as a stop loss. It can test 340 intraday. Now, if it's crossing the 340 mark, you can see it heading higher towards 360. The risk reward is quite favorable. Support is strong around 320. Hold the longs for higher targets of 360.
So those are the OMCs in play. A whole lot of other movers this morning. I just want to talk a bit about HFCL, and as more details of that deal are of course awaited. Sony, are you liking HFCL on the charts?
Certainly, I think it's also an official recommendation given by a technical desk on Friday. The stock is looking quite strong. It can head higher towards 175, 178. It's given a good breakout also. I have, for intraday, if somebody wants to buy, you can accumulate on small dips around 165 to 162. Keep a stop loss of 155 and a target of 175 to 180 can be seen.
Sony, I remember last week when we'd spoken, you were fairly constructive on Tata Power. The counter failed to see a breakout, but surprisingly, I have you this morning and we're seeing pretty solid volume moves on Tata Power. It's up about 1%, so in percentage terms, not very high, but it's moving significantly on volumes.
Definitely, yes, Samina. Tata Power is actually consolidating. The higher end of the consolidation range is just around the corner. It's around 450 to 454. On the downside, there are multiple support levels, but the one that's crucially standing out for is around 435. Now, if it's able to cross above its resistance of 452, 454 for the day, you can see it heading higher towards 470, 75. So continue to hold the stock. It's just consolidating right now. Keep your stop losses at 435 and look for high targets of 470, 480.
That's a hold coming in Tata Power, and as we speak, it's getting closer to 450 as we see it 1% higher on Tata Power in early minutes of trade. A few more counters that stand out as we see it, and you've seen some sort of activity picking up on the broader market universe is Glenmark, that's up 7%, that's a big move. Adani Total, 5.5%. Mankind Pharma is looking good. Suvain Pharma is looking good. ACT is looking good. Very quickly on Adani Total, Sony, how do the charts look?
So Adani Total on charts is looking decent. It is also consolidating. As we can see, the broader range of the consolidation can be seen. On a higher side, 845 is a resistance. On a lower side, 800 is a good support. Now it has to move above 845 to see any further move towards 880 to 900 odd levels. Hold the stock and accumulate at current levels, but keep a strict stop loss of 800. Look for the higher targets of A900.
You've seen the first few minutes of trade, about nearly 15 minutes of trade settling in. Do you have a fresh set of stocks that you're seeing poised for a breakout today? Anything that you're finding interesting?
I think, Tamana, we've discussed Bajaj Auto, we've discussed Tata Power, ICICI Prudential, but as of now, we'll keep a watch on, SBI. It's not exactly giving a very strong breakout. It's just bouncing back. There's a 20 EMA hurdle for SBI at around 800, 798 to 800 odd level. Now, if this level can cross, there can be a short covering in SBI, which has underperformed to the rest of its peers. But it's a stock to just watch out for, and any move above 800, 805, you can see it heading higher towards 820, 830 odd levels. There's good support of 780 as of now. The stock is just consolidating. Keep a watch in SBI above 805. It can be a good short covering buy towards 825.
Not on the Bank Nifty, because we're seeing the Nifty looking fairly strong, holding up as well. Sony, but the Bank Nifty not really participating. Do you see the chances of that changing today?
I think Bank Nifty on expected lines, 54,000 was supposed to test. It's already made a high of 53,900 plus levels. This index is quite strong. There's good support. Intraday 53,300 is the support. Continue to hold in the longs for Bank Nifty. There's a possibility of it crossing the 54,000 psychological resistance mark. Above that, you can see it heading higher towards 54,500 as well. Remember that Bank Nifty Wednesday would be the final expiry, so the rollovers will start counting for Bank Nifty from today onwards, which is going to be very crucial. So there's a possibility of the rollovers happening at a higher levels towards 54,000 plus levels.
Right, thank you for that, Sony. In fact, your Tata Power recommendation is actually doing quite well. As soon as you highlighted it, the stock is up nearly 2% as we see it on healthy volumes. Thank you, Sony. Thank you, Chakri. Great having both of you and talking to you both about the markets this morning.